This is going to be our Jack Sparrow shirt. This is what the finished item will look like. I'm going to be following the dress pattern quite precisely, but there are some instances where I will be making alterations, especially to the sleeves, because on the dress pattern they're ruffled cuffs, but on Jack's shirt they're just straightforward long cuffs that normally would be turned back on themselves. So this is what we're going to make, and I will go through the pattern step by step, hopefully in easy stages, so you'll be able to see how the pattern is put together, and this is how the pattern will end up. And this is what the back view looks like. In the pattern you'll be instructed to put an interliner into the cuffs and also into the collar. But this is going to be a very well worn shirt, and once I've distressed it and messed it up a bit, I want it to look as close as possible to Jack Sparrow's. And I'm sure back in those days they wouldn't have had any interfacing whatsoever. I want the shirt to be really baggy and not be stiff at all. So I've not put any interlining in the shirt at all. Hi, this is going to be my tutorial for making Jack Sparrow's costume. This is the pattern I should be using. Simplicity 4923, which is a reasonable representation of what it would look like. There will be a few alterations on the way to make it look a little bit more like Jack Sparrow's outfit, and I shall try and show you everything I can to make it as near as possible. The first thing I've done is to cut out the front and back, and before I do anything else I've overlocked about 6 to 8 inches up from the bottom hem on all of the pieces, front and back. This will be useful later on when you have to turn over the seam to finish off your shirt. The great thing about making this particular outfit is that it doesn't matter how big it is. The baggier the better, because there are going to be a lot of gathers at the neck and at the sleeves. The next step is to overlock the shoulder seams on the front and the back pieces. I shan't bother to overlock down the side where the sleeve is going to be sewn in. I shall overlock that when the sleeve has been put in, and then I can neaten it off in one operation. And I shan't bother overlocking the neck, as this won't be seen anyway once the collar goes on. If you don't have an overlocker, a pair of pinking shears will do just as well. It's only to neaten off the seams. Next will be the front facing. This part of the garment goes into the front neck piece to neaten it off. And what I shall do first is overlock all the sides, or you can pink them. Now we're going to put the front facing in, and using the fold of the centre back is quite useful. Pin that into place all the way to the top, and then on the pattern it has a guideline as to where the sewing has got to be. A slight turn at the bottom. So I've transferred these markings onto my front facing. You just about see them in light blue pen, and now those will be my sewing lines. Having sewn in the front facing, you now have to cut the slit all the way down the middle, but be careful not to cut the stitching right at the end. Then you will turn the whole facing the right way out. After turning the facing to the other side, sew along the top for a few stitches, then all the way down to the point, turn and then come all the way back, and then just sew along the top for a few stitches just to hold it in place. Next I'm going to do the cuff, which will have a slight alteration, because on the Jack costume there is a small cuff where the button is attached, and there's an extended cuff that hangs over his hands, but is generally turned back. So what I've done is I've cut out the cuff pattern, and this is where the button will be, and then I've cut out another cuff pattern, but this time twice the length of the pattern piece, but I've kept the width. This will be the extended piece. I could do this all in one piece, but to keep it a little bit more authentic, I want to have that seam line that connects the small cuff to the big cuff. Okay, I've cut out the pieces, and I've now attached the shorter one to the long one at the top, and you may need to make two of these, front and a back. Then you will open them out, and then you'll put right side to right side, and then starting at the shorter one, you'll be going down the side, along the bottom, and back up the side again. Because this part is going to be attached to the sleeve, I'm not going to be sewing that up at all. I've now sewn the two pieces together, and before you turn it back in the right way, remember to clip the corners, but not too close as to cut the sewing. And then what I've done is, on the original it looks as though they've hand sewn these edges together using an embroidery thread, but my hand sewing really isn't that good. So I've put it on a large stitch, and I've just gone round this section on the machine. Pull all the threads to the back, and then tie them off with a knot, and then cut it off. Moving on to the sleeve now, the first thing I need to do is to neaten off the cuff ends with some overlocking, which goes for about 6 to 8 inches, just to neaten off the edge. That's the same on both sides. And then between your marks, I've secured the end, and then I've done a large running stitch on the machine. Make sure that you put a notch for your centre section, and then finish off at your other mark. As well as putting a gathering stitch in, where you're going to attach it into the shoulders, also put a gathering stitch along the bottom where the cuff is going to be sewn